Appreciate you. Here we are, Button.
All right, you slid in the home just under the tag. Good to see you guys. I was beginning to be like a little concerned that we would not have Julia's presence. We often need a woman in this space, and I'm glad she could join us. Glad you could join us too, Greg, brother Mike, Bob, Danya. Thanks for being on the ones and twos, and of course, Meryl. Appreciate you providing this space and opportunity. How you doing? Good to see you, Julia. Um, so welcome. Uh, glad to be here. Glad to be here this evening. And I'll start with a few words about a non-political show today. It might bleed into some politics, but our president Joe Biden did a press conference today. I consciously stayed away from it because I knew I would be occupying the space, and I didn't want to start conversations about that. So maybe I'll revisit it and we'll engage on it in the next GFB. But in the meantime, I know the topic for tonight's show, one that I think is relative to the human condition, and your knowledge of what it is to be a human being, and some of the stuff that takes place in our existences, in our lifetimes, and outside of our lifetimes. But what makes, or how do you make a wrong right? You can personalize that. You can apply it to history, and that's some of what we're going to do this evening. So I'll ask myself that question, and how do I make a wrong right? It's not just an apology. Sometimes it's an action. If you're driving someone else's car and you have an accident, and they don't have liability or collision, whichever one it is, I often get them mixed up. But if they don't have the ability to take care of it, it should be on you to do so. That's making that wrong right. Even if it wasn't your fault, you were responsible for their car and what have you. So I want to start off by going around the room, and you don't have to get as personal. You never have to get that personal in this space, but you can be general in what's an example of making a wrong right in your life. And I'm definitely, brother Mike. I know you often join via the web, but since you're here in the physical form tonight, I'm glad to have you. I'll start with you, man. What can you give us an example? Like I said, you got to go too personal, but just something that you can reach to and give us something that was in your lifetime that you realized that there was a time that you had to make this wrong right, and you took the steps to do so.
Well, will be my criminal history. I went down the wrong path. The difference in me and others, I got caught. They never got caught. So what I've done since coming home, rehabilitating, I've been getting more involved in my community, one, and two, I've been more of an advocate for change and an advocate for Black Lives Matter and an advocate for recidivism. As people say, I don't never sleep. I don't take no breaks. Breaks as in BRAKE or BREAK. Because it's not time to wait. It's not time to take breaks. It's time to push change. I apologize, my son back here. He followed me. He see me move. He followed me. But so yeah, my past history of criminal charges. I allowed that to not make me or break me into a bad person, but make me and break me into a strong man and father now. And I keep pushing change regardless if people like it and if they don't like it. I motivate people that if I can do it, you can do it.
So
So that's
you
what I've been able to do.
so you took your personal experiences and what you would describe as, and I correct me if I'm wrong, but shortcomings in your participation in things that you may have should have absconded from, and you turned that into some purposeful work, and decided to take that energy and place it elsewhere. So that's making a wrong right, not just in your personal life, but you took that and you're giving it to other people. You're giving some knowledge out, and you letting people know that as long as you're here, you can do something else if you choose to. That's commendable, man. That's appreciable. Julia and Greg, I'm going to come to you guys if there's some ideas or thoughts you can share around the time that you made a wrong right.
Okay. I think Julia might have one.
Mine's just a real short one, but it ties into what you said about with the car about accepting responsibility and dealing with many customers in catering. You know, we're really listening, trying to listen to what they're saying. And in the old days, even before computers, we wrote everything down on paper and then transcribed it to another worksheet that went to the kitchen. And details are not my specialty. They have gotten to be. And I remember there was one special anniversary, and honey mustard chicken always came with twice baked potatoes. I forgot to send twice baked potatoes. It was a big anniversary. And just accepting that response, you know, and it happened that I was serving, Gregory and I were actually serving at this big fancy anniversary dinner. And we ended up going to a restaurant and trying to make it right. But we just, you know, we apologized right away to the couple, and, you know, and said, we are so sorry and we're going to make it right. The customer, you know, your guests will never know, but just accepting it and then getting in solution oriented mode, and trying to make it right.
Yeah. How can you fix it, right? How can you correct the mistake, but not just correct the mistake? How can you actually show, in your case, a customer that you're sincere in your efforts and you want to make sure they understand that you're about doing better every time, anytime they interact with you, not just the one time you make a mistake. So that's one time, I guess, overcorrecting is a good thing. Yeah. Yeah.
And sometimes we learned that mistakes make the best of customers, because not only did we correct a mistake and we were genuine and sincere, we didn't charge them for half of their meal. So they became one of our best customers.
Yeah. I call that good business. I really do. It means that you consider the person and not just what you do. You're not trying to just get them out of your hair. You're actually happy to have them as a customer, and that in turn makes them happy to be frequent your business. That's great. That's a good example outside of, you know, some of the more broader issues that someone may personalize. But so far, that's a great balance with what Mike shared and what Julia shared. I greatly appreciate those. Greg, did you want to participate, or was that the soul? That's the one coming from the house.
How about let Julia speak for the Brazers? That's good for me.
Okay. All right. That will work, man. Meryl, what about yourself, man? In your travels, making a wrong right?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right, cool. My mic was doing some weird in my headphones. So yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm thinking I'll use the context of like doing some of the community work that I've done, or been able to, or trying to help somebody like in a work situation where I've made a mistake. And I know typically, you know, like my impulse is like if you make a mistake or you do something, or you feel like there's something that you cause somebody some injury or something, you want to just do something real quick and fix it. And what I've been trying to be more disciplined, and I know the last couple of things about working in the community where maybe I made a judgment or just try to solve or approach something in a way that wasn't inclusive or wasn't as thoughtful as I wanted to be, is to take my time and reflect on that mistake and write. I do a lot of writing now, and usually with some thought and reflection, you're able to kind of come up with look at it, I guess, in a more careful manner and think about like how to apologize or, you know, rectify the situation. So like I think the best way to do it is to be reflective and not have some immediate need to satisfy this thing, so you don't have this guilt, but like sit with it and reflect. And typically I do that with writing.
Yeah. So your approach to, in any example at this point in your career and what you do right now, is to really be insightful and thoughtful in any attempts to correct a lot of wrongs that don't even include anything you've done personally, but just in how you're addressing the nonprofit world that you're in right now. That's wonderful, and I think that's highly important. A lot of times people find themselves in certain positions and they detach and they just know how to fix stuff. I can tell you, let me do this. And that's without consideration of what they're trying to fix. So it's wonderful that you take the time to consider, to write down your thoughts and on certain things. That's great. So myself, one of the more paramount things that I attempted in terms of righting a wrong, and I expanded this beyond anything personal. It was some of that thinking that you were talking about, Meryl. Some of that customer service, having a good person in place that you guys were talking about, Julia and Greg, and also just recognizing historic ills and things that had been failures for certain people, and primarily Black Americans is what I'm focused on. So I was working at the Y a number of years ago, and a young man was desiring to work there as I forget what the term was. I was the director of sports and the Black and Latino Achievers, but he was a sports coordinator. That's what he was applying for. And I knew, for one, that I wanted to be specific in this hire, if I could. And I knew that once this young man presented himself, that he would be an awesome guy to take that job. He was a student at A&T. He presented himself well, and he understood how you have to work with customers, especially when you're going to be dealing with some underprivileged kids, groups of people who are not financially viable, but desiring of programming that they should be able to access. And there was another guy that was, impossible hire, but I knew that this guy was the one. And that was a time that, in the context of my mind, it was analogous to that glass ceiling or that lack of opportunity that so many Black men in this country have run up against, whether it be in career or a chance to go to a certain school and what have you. And I was in a place where I knew that this particular Black young man was more than capable. And the capable didn't start with what he already knew. It started with what he was willing to learn. So that was my moment, in the smallest of senses, of a historical wrong, an enormous amount of historical wrongs that have occurred concerning Black men, Black American men, where I had the power to say, hey, I'm going to fight for this guy. And I did. I had to do some talking and have some conversations and sell my boss on why this was the young man to hire. And he's still a good young man. I'm not at the Y anymore. He's not at the Y no more. He's getting married soon. Solid guy. And it was good to be a part of some of that transition in his life for that moment. But we still are in conversation. I think very highly of him, and I think he thinks very highly of me. Otherwise, I don't know if I'd have been invited to his wedding. But I say all that to say, when you have the moment and have the ability to really step, whether it needs to be inside of yourself or outside of yourself, to consider how you can do something that may be something that should have been done before. It's definitely worth doing. Which brings me to Bob. And Bob, I don't mind if you do a personal story that you want to share otherwise, but I am aware of something that you've done more recently that I commended you for, and I'm going to let you unpack it, and I'll interject where I need be, or you can give me a wave and I'll jump in and say what I need to say about it. But I want you to talk about either something personal, or you can go straight to what I think was a tremendous action on your part.
That you're at the question that you ask presumes that we're people that will recognize and acknowledge the fact that we've done something wrong to start with, because there are an awful lot of people that won't do that. There are an awful lot of people that will deflect responsibility to other people. They'll just threaten. They'll call in their attorneys. They'll do all sorts of things to completely avoid, sidestep, deny, et cetera, their either direct action or their complicity in action that is wrong. And so it's a compliment, I think, from you to the group to ask the question the way you did it, because it presumes that this crowd of people that you're asking are people that are willing to recognize and accept responsibility, and then do something with that. I'm reminded of something that I'm grateful for. When I was a little boy, I had a paper route for a little while, and one day I threw a paper onto a front porch, but I threw it a little bit too hard, and I threw it a little bit wrong direction, and it broke through the front window of the living room of the house and landed inside. And I was terrified. And I just quickly rolled away on a bicycle, not thinking about the fact that, well, the newspaper is now inside. Clearly, it was the projectile that came through the window. And so went home, fretted about it a good bit. Telephone rang. My mother answered it. It was the highway patrolman who lived in that house.
Oh, no.
Asking about me and the newspaper and whatnot. And my mother was confused, thinking that that's not something my son would have done. And so she asked me about it, and I probably just looked at her. Shortly later, the patrolman arrived at our house, and we had a conversation about it. And the cool thing about that was nobody got mad at me. My mother didn't get mad. My father was there. He didn't get mad. The patrolman didn't get mad. They just talked about it. And it was a lesson learned, really, that you make a mistake, you just own up to it. And as long as you're dealing with reasonable people, then you figure out a way to fix it. You figure out a way to take responsibility. And if you're throwing a rock through a window because you're being mischievous or mean, that's a very different thing than doing something that's accidental. And so I think that's probably when I really learned that accepting responsibility for things that I did wrong, because I don't do wrong things intentionally. I do wrong things, but they're accidents, they're mistakes, they're errors, or they're whatever. So I make that comment to start with. And there are other examples where I could tell you stories about that kind of thing with me, but I don't think I need to. The thing that you bring up goes to what you just said about your own story and that young man. We have to be intentional about being helpful. And I believe that more and more and more and more every single day of my life, that we can just roll on and be comfortable, or we can be intentional about recognizing opportunities where we have the power or the voice or the resources or the position or whatever to actually be helpful and do something. And it's not about just doing something to fix something we've done wrong. It's doing something that's systemic or culturally wrong, or that's wrong in our community, or even if it's not wrong, it's a negative something that's going on that somebody needs to help with. And so if we can, my belief is if we can, we have an obligation to. If we can't, we can't. You can't do what you can't do. But if you can, if you've got tools that you can use to do things that are helpful, and so at some point after my boys were grown, finished college, the expenses of raising them, the expenses of college, the expenses of all those sorts of things were gone. I began to think about, now what? And I'm a graduate of Wake Forest University. My younger son is a graduate of Wake Forest University, undergraduate, and the business school. His wife now is a graduate. She's also a graduate of law school. So I've got a lot of different perspective into Wake Forest and a lot of relationships at Wake Forest, and really began to explore, you know, where my passion is there, what aspects of what the school is doing energize me, light me up, if you will, and ways that I could be helpful. And the areas that I really found myself focused with were first generation college students, leadership and character, program for leadership and character, diversity and inclusion, and the arts. And so the question really became, you know, is there a way I can play in that, a way I can be helpful with that? And so I did a few things and got involved in an array of different things, and got involved with some different student initiatives and some different things where I could facilitate stuff that fit in with those various realms. And I also established a scholarship for leadership and character with the idea that my state would endow that scholarship. And one day I learned that the leadership and character program has 10 leadership and character scholars and scholarships for the class that entered in 2019. And then another group of 10 for a full cohort of 20 for the year entering 2020. And I learned that there was a scholarship missing, that they were one short. And so I thought, okay, I paid for my son to go to school here. I can pay for a scholarship for somebody else to go to school here too. And so we established a scholarship to fund and to a current use scholarship fund to fund a full ride scholarship for somebody coming in to be a part of the leadership and character program. So then you get to decide, okay, who do you want to preference with those scholarships? And so we preferenced first generation. We preferenced underrepresented racial and ethnic groups, and preferenced first generation college students, and preferenced people with financial need. And so that's how it was set up. Roll forward, sometime in the last year, I met this guy. His name's Felton, and I met him here at this gathering. And Felton was generous enough to meet me outside of this group for lunch one day, and we began to talk. And we ended up going for a walk and continued to talk after we had lunch. And then we began to get together for lunch and walks and walks and walks and walks and walks and talk and walks and talk. And we've become, from my perspective, very good friends actually in the course of all that. Felton and I never just talk about chit chat. We always talk about substantial stuff. And we always talk about stuff that we get lit up about, and it's always energized. It's always respectful. It's always listening and talking and interrupting and listening and talking and interrupting and whatnot. And one of the things that we've talked about is how in the Black community specifically, there's a difference between Black people whose heritage is slavery and Black people whose heritage is not. And there's a difference between people of color, a term I despise, just to be candid, and Black Americans that are descendants of slavery. And yet we optically and culturally mix all that up. It's like, okay, if we've now got a black person that came from the Caribbean last year elected to a particular office, okay, we've got a black person. We're solving that problem. Or somebody that just came from Africa, even. We're fine. We've got these black people in these roles and whatnot, and we're all good. Okay, what are we doing for the people who for 400 years have been building this country on an unequal footing, who built the wealth and whatnot of families, of businesses, of and who continue to be, I'm going to say, marginalized. What about that? And so last Thursday, when I missed this group, I was involved in a Wake Forest Leadership and Character conference, and I got to listen last Thursday night to Colin Powell and Margaret Albright. And as Colin was introducing himself, he was talking about being of Jamaican heritage, and I'm like, damn, even him. He's Jamaican. He's not of Africa. He's not of slavery descent in this country. And so I just decided literally right then that, okay, we're going to change this scholarship, and we're going to make this scholarship a scholarship for Black Americans, descendants of slavery. And so I wrote a note that night to Wake Forest and my relationships there, and that got started. And then this morning had a conversation with Wake Forest that, guess what? Federal government doesn't allow that. Federal government says you can't prefer people of a particular cultural heritage, and slavery counts. So in spite of affirmative action and in spite of all that, there are only certain ways you can press the affirmative action line, and cultural heritage is specifically forbade, not by one, but by multiple laws or regulations. And it also is problematic because legislatively and in the courts, we're now in a phase where there's a much more restrictive reading of the laws that prohibit, and a much less generous reading and interpretation of the laws that facilitate. So what I learned is that we have the language that's in the scholarship agreement presses the preference, I'll say, parameters as much as they can possibly be pressed based upon regulations and whatnot. And so we're going to have to skin that cat. We can't change the language of the scholarship. So we're going to have to skin that cat a different way. But the point I want to make about that is it really informs us, I think, a lot as to what we have to do and what we have to reach for in terms of federal regulations, pressing the conversation around reparations, leveraging where the idea of reparations is at least receptive, where there's reception to it. I mean, if we as private citizens are prohibited by law to do things of our own accord to work toward remedying wrongs of the past, even if we're not complicit, if we're still prevented from doing that, then for heaven's sakes, I mean, that has to be relieved. Even if we don't achieve reparations from a government funding perspective in some fashion, we need to at least be able to, as private citizens, do things that contribute to repairing the gross wrong of that 400 years.
Yeah, I'm a fan of both ends, Bob. Both both
Me
should be able to take place.
Me,
Yeah.
me too.
One
But I
thing
mean-
I want to interject really quickly before you continue, and wonderful. I mean, we have more to talk about because of the reaction from what you were trying to do, and I'm glad that you're not giving up and just leaving it at where they would like to say, hey, you know, we can't do that. Something I want to say to really acknowledge a level of sensibility in terms of slavery, while making it clear that this is not a nativist thing or a xenophobic thing that we're discussing. That Colin Powell, who you brought up, you know, from Jamaica. Jamaica was, you know, rampant with slavery. The Caribbean slavery, that's the first place that slavery visits. But we're speaking about American slavery and the descendants of American slavery. So that specificity is what we're trying to key in on, and what I am putting front and center in most discussions that I have these days, just recentering the reason why this country has become more of what it has claimed to be is based on this group of people that are specific and that have the need for redress here and now. And that's what I commended you for, your action. It was not about the overall philanthropic work. That's a beautiful thing in itself. But when you shared with me that you had decided to change the criteria to be specific, man, that was awesome. I didn't tell you to do that. I didn't have a discussion with you one day when we were talking and say, hey, that scholarships you got to do. This was something it's a conclusion you reached on your own, right? That's what made it all the more worthy of recognition. And I'm glad that you were comfortable enough to come here and share that with us. But if there was more you needed to unpack there, I definitely want to hear it. So please continue.
No, I've talked too long. I think that it goes to the issue of we have to pay attention. We have to learn. We have to perpetually gain more aha moments, as I call them. And we do that by talking and listening. And you asked me when we first met something about what's your motive, what's your agenda? Well, no, I'd never been asked that question before. I didn't mind the question. I just never had thought about it before. But I think the agenda was to get to know each other and engage in constructive conversation around issues that we share. And it was triggered by, again, me being in this room with you and being that guy. I appreciated things that you were saying, and I appreciated your perspective, and I wanted to tune into it better. And so I think that when there are things that we care about, the more we can involve and engage with other people and talk, particularly people whose experience base and perspectives are different than our own, not by choice, but by background and by experience, then again, we have an obligation to engage and to listen and then to move as we feel like we have the power or the opportunity to do things that really get to what it is we need to be getting to. And it's not about optics. It's about impact. It's not about intentions. It's about impact. And it's not about activity. It's about results. And so I've got ideas and plans as to, okay, where do I take this now that we are where we are? And because I am convinced that Wake Forest would rather that scholarship have the language in it that I shared with you than the language that it has.
That's the beauty of certain, I don't want to just say institutions, but certain groups being able to be accessed and influenced, because rules are made to be changed. And once the understanding is reached as to why, as you stated, it becomes what are we doing? What are we waiting for? Like,
Exactly.
why don't we just knock this out? So yeah, even in the rejection at this moment, the fact that you're carrying it as far as you can, and even further, it sounds like, because if Wake Forest is on board with something, I'm sure that they can figure out a way to.
Well, yeah, and I think that, and we don't have to talk about it tonight. We'll talk about it later. But I think that Wake Forest can. I think I can engage Wake Forest to use relationships, academics, to press this issue at the federal level.
Yeah.
And press this issue and come back and say, okay, here's what we need to do. And develop a strategy for how we can address this culturally. And back to your point, yeah, you're exactly right. Africa's history of slavery of its own right, the Caribbean its own too. But the issue we're talking about is 400 years of American citizens contributing to the wealth of white people,
yeah,
and the wealth of the country. And that's not fair. It's got to be fixed. So,
hey, man, like I said, to know that even when it takes this turn, you continue to really unpack some of the ideas that you've shared, but based on gaining some perspective, as you said, from someone else, and activating based on that. So I commend that, man. I hope that this is something that I can watch and as it becomes more of what we desire it to be, celebrated along the way.
Yeah, this will be another recurring conversation topic for you and me.
I look forward to it. Just watching this take place gradually. Watching a flower bloom is a wonderful sight. So seeing something go through whatever it has to become a real thing is important. And it's not at a place where it won't be seen on a high level. That's a significant thing for Wake Forest to endeavor upon, and potentially show some other places what they may need to participate in and do. Okay, so I appreciate you sharing all of that, Bob, and we're gonna just kind of just open up the conversation a little bit more, and that was important for me to bring here to this space, because as Bob said, this is where we first interacted, and hey, man, it's been a good friendship thus far, and I look forward to more actions and conversations that allow me, someone who is heavily entrenched in being a Black American man and understanding what that is from a historical perspective. It allows me to not detach, and not that I'm ever threatened to detach, but not give up on humanity. One of my primary motivators when it comes to knowing that it's about the human race and not about the social construct of race. John Brown's a personal hero of mine, and one of these days we'll have another discussion about him, and I'll play a really good reenactment of the speech he gave before he was hung for treason. So, Bob, I'm not elevating you to that status, nor what I think you would want to be, but I am recognizing of someone who's proactive, thoughtful, insightful, and when they see a wrong, they decide they want to do something about it. Then that's why we're here in this space.
Well, I've not been hung yet.
Don't.
So until I am, I can't be at that status. But again, it's back to the issue of if you've got voice in a space and you've got access to resources, you got an obligation to use them. That's all I'm doing.
Yeah, that's the obligation that you have to remind yourself you have, because some people get it and they, it's like I said, they become that person. It's just like, hey, I can tell you what you need, and let me tell you exactly how you should feel about what I'm about to do for you on top of it. Nah, it's got to be, let me ask the question. you know, that's the way I look at this thing. Meryl, you got any thoughts on this matter? I know you're in that world and you deal with a lot when it comes to some of the philanthropic activities in North Carolina. I thought what Bob did was a wonderful act, and I shared it with you with the same. I don't get excited about a lot of things. I don't get happy. I don't get too high or too low. I'm pretty even keel, unless it's golf, Cowboys, a couple other things maybe. But yeah, when you shared that, man, that was something that spoke to what I feel is a part of the work that I do, and that I know is a part of the work that Meryl does. So not just about what Bob did, but is there anything else you have that you want to put on the table as far as the whole idea of righting a wrong?
Yeah, I mean, no, other than just like, folks in power and proximity to power have to have those conversations. It starts there. I was just thinking a lot about, before I started really focusing on the nonprofit work in Rockingham County about procurement policies. States are able to have procurement set-asides, but at the federal level, it's not allowed. I mean, it has to be based on like the revenue of your business. So something like you did, Bob, if there's somebody in the room at the federal level when they're having like these procurement issues, which really address, big chunks of our wealth gap is because, it's who governments and folks do business with, and they don't particularly do business with people that look like Mia Felton or Danye or Mike. And so like there has to be more work done in those spaces, and people have to speak up. And it can't always be the marginalized person raising their hand, so that really rings really special to me, and appreciate you having that conversation, because there's some risk that's involved in doing that, because sometimes you may, I think folks want to be advocates and allies until they're uncomfortable, or if it's going to reduce some power or some relationship that they find valuable that's individually beneficial, and not thinking about the collective. So
yeah, you gotta have what's that skin in the game. It's what is Bob wrestled with me calling them or saying it was commendable at the onset, until I explained why I mentioned it was commendable in my mind, and it's, it can be not commendable to do nice things if you're walking around and you're the richest man in the world and you give a homeless person $20. There's something askew about, there's some imbalance that doesn't quite fit that narrative. It was a generous gesture, so how can you condemn him for it? It gets a little tricky when you think about it, but we're in a space and time where it is easy to not do or not attempt to right a wrong. It's easy to just be off into yourself and make sure you're good and you eat, and you can watch whatever show you want to watch, and to think about someone that you don't have to think about, to consider someone who may not know that anyone considers them, that's commendable. And when you put action behind it, it's more commendable. So that's the type situation we have to start finding ourselves in as human beings. What you got there, Julia and Gregory?
Sorry, this just is such a wonderful conversation, and Bob did something that Meryl talked about, and we so admire this about Bob, is he's reflective, and he really listened to what Felton said, and he reflected on it, and it wasn't anything Felton said to do, but Bob knew it was the next right thing to do, and so he did it. And this also brought up the idea of sometimes when we want to help, that we don't always help in the right way. You know, helping, like we think giving $20 to a homeless person might be helping. You know, a lot of us would think that. We recently had a situation, I've mentioned our wonderful pot washer before, Mike, who's 62 years old, excuse me, drug addict, drink, alcohol recovery, been incarcerated probably half his life. And he found us, and it's the first job he's been respected. And even after COVID, he's continued to work with us. We pay him, and he gets all the free food he can eat. And he also volunteers with us. But recently, he's been having a lot of car problems. So our leadership group got together and we said, well, should we give him money to fix his car? And in digging deeper and knowing about Mike, what we recognized was that would not be a solution to give him $750 to fix his car. What he needs is much deeper than that. He needs help with his finances, how to do a budget. He's got credit cards that are maxed out. He's got debt, people calling him. He doesn't take care of his car. So we've assembled a group of people, including a wonderful accountant, Bob knows her, Susan Baggett. She's going to give him financial counseling for free. So that is what help is, starting at the basics and not just giving him money to fix his car. We took his car to the shop, and then he's going to bring his car out to us, and Gregory and Todd are going to look at it and really get it into shape so he doesn't have to pay. But, it's when we think we're helping just by giving someone money, that's not it. We just have to dig deeper and keep, trying to come to the root of the problem, of the situation.
Yeah. Well said, Julia. The root and the time it takes. Sustainability is critically important to any of these endeavors. Racism, systemic racism, white supremacy, whatever you want to call the things that have caused so much dysfunction in our country, they wait. And they have a significantly long lifespan. If they transcend our lifetimes. They're been around forever. So if we're not intentional, if we're not about sustaining the repair, then it'll just wait a little longer and it'll disrupt and show up again. So yeah, absolutely. That's a great example of what it means to not just say, well, look, I took care of that. No, it's a sustainability element inside of that. If he spent that number of years, and I don't know him personally and I don't want to misspeak about him, but if he spent a number of years at a level of dysfunction, then you have to put in either an equal amount of time or less time, but be more forceful and impactful. It takes that sustained presence of someone. It takes the time. We have to make the time. Brother Mike, you got something you want to throw out there before we start wrapping this up? Thanks for sharing that, Julia.
And I want to know the name of your cute baby. He's adorable.
That's best. But young King Jasir right there. That's my heart, man. I have him always on the camera. When he comes into the office, he goes right to putting on the camera on the mic and talking into it. So I'm training him up right. But man, I just want to say salute to my white allies, Brother Bob, Miss Julia, and Mr. Greg. I'm always watching. I might, if out of the month, I might catch 2 or 3 shows. So I don't miss a show every month. And I take it an honor. Brother Merle sent me an invite to be on screen today. But salute to what you're saying, Brother Bob. You wanted to change your scholarship up, man. It brought tears to me. I love to see someone wants to make a change, not just talking about change, but wants to make people uncomfortable and want to ruffle some feathers. You're not afraid to lose friends, if I can say that. You're not afraid to upset some people. You're not afraid to get some people unbalanced, like this seesaw. The seesaw is up and we down here. It's like we got to get the seesaw balanced. You know what I'm saying? It's like a scale. And the things they're giving you is like they're shooting you some bullcrap. So we want them to give us a fairness, equality. That's gonna tell us anything. So I love that. Salute to you, Brother Bob. And man, I commend you for your work. Mama Julie, I'm gonna call you Papa Greg. Man, I commend y'all for helping that man, you know, that's 62 years old. Y'all identified his issue and then came up with a strategic plan to fix his issue. So you didn't say, well, I'm gonna give him this 750, I'm gonna give him this job and this will help him. No, you taught him how to fish. You didn't just give him a fish, you're teaching him how to fish. So that's where I'm at the end of this day. Like, I tell people this person needs help. They be like, oh, wait, you sure they need help? Yeah, they need help. Everybody needs help. So let's identify what they need and provide the resources to them to get them their help. Now, we provide them financial literacy. You provide them a job. You provide them help with a car. If they don't take that year or 2 years and run with it, that's on them. But as long as you provide the necessities to them, people are not looking for a handout. They're looking for a hand up. So that's what you're providing, Brother Bob, a hand up for people. Brother, Sister, Mama Julia, and Papa Greg, a hand up to people. I'm tired of people like want to say, oh, I don't think they need help, or I don't believe this. Yeah, see, that's your problem. You can't paint everybody with the same paintbrush. Put that paintbrush in the water, change the paint, and let's keep painting. You know what I'm saying? And let's learn to be flexible. Let's learn to be different. Let's learn not to put everybody in the same box. Again, Brother Bob, Mama Julia, and Papa Greg, we thank y'all because I love that conversation, man. That I wish our peoples could have that conversation. Yeah, I make some of our black people upset because they're afraid to. Oh, I'm afraid what people may think. I'm afraid what people may believe. I'm not afraid. That's why I got less friends possible. I'm an advocate for change. I speak up, I speak out, and that's just it. You don't like me, you don't like me. I ain't worried about you. Cool, man. You didn't like Jesus, so it is what it is. But hey, I love y'all. I appreciate y'all, and I do follow y'all. Brother Felton, I salute to that man, black man. He does, you know, like you said, don't too much excite him. But when something is genuine, it excites him. I like that. Hey, big bro, Brother Merle, great man. Thank you for what you do. And Brother Donnie, man, I wish I could be cool like you, man.
Hey,
I
man.
want to hear that Papa Greg again.
Yeah, give it to him. Oh man, yeah. That might be the new moniker for you too. We might have to change the name on the screen.
Papa Greg and Mama Julia. I love it.
Hey, now when you're on here again, don't forget come out with a guitar or something, man, and you know some candles. You know, it sounds like an old '70s band or something. But no, man, great words. Brother Mike, we appreciate you being on air tonight, man. Go ahead. What were you saying?
We've got a beautiful place out here in Davie County. I look forward to the time that this group right here can gather there, and the invitation is open when it's available.
For fishing or hiking or an airplane ride.
And sharing a meal.
That sounds awesome, and I definitely appreciate that. And you know, everybody that tunes in and that comes onto the broadcast, that might be one time that we're not on air, so you got to be there in person. And I think the first TV was actually a campfire. So you know, let's watch the first TV, and you know, nothing's coming out of it but heat. So we'll sit around and talk otherwise, and get to
We'll
know
leave
each
it
other
in
a
your
little better.
capable hands when we can do that.
We have a great fire circle.
So, hey, I look forward to it. I really do.
And we do a picnic.
Oh yeah. Hey, I'm here for it. It sounds good. Sounds good. Listen, man. This has been awesome. I love the group of people that are here. If it's 5 of us, 6 of us in a space like this, then there's more out there in the world, and that makes me feel better, especially given some of the most recent tragic events that just take place and divert our attention from thinking positively about this place because there's so much mess that takes place otherwise. Brother Mike, thanks for the kind words. Glad you can make it to be on air, and keep doing what you're doing. And I know we got to get together and have some conversations and see how we can. I don't know what my role would be or how I could help, but I'm here for it, man. So just know that. Bob, thanks for sharing that particular story. I'm pleased, and as Brother Mike said, brought tears to him. I want to communicate, and I don't want it to be another conversation, but I want it to be communicated clearly. Black Americans have known for a long time the situations that they've experienced on a historical level. And when a gesture is made, a grand one, it does resonate. It resonates here, and it resonates across generations. And that gesture can be small. Someone I mentioned yesterday in another meeting, someone allowing you to cross the street as you walk to class, and they say, "We need you in there. I need you to get across the street safely." Or someone actually taking the time, thinking about some stuff, and making an adjustment to something to address a wrong. I appreciate you guys being here. I appreciate everybody that tuned in tonight. There was some really good comments. I didn't get a chance to read any of them, but I read them, but didn't read them out loud. So I didn't get a chance to engage them, but you guys keep coming and keep supporting, and we'll keep this show on the road. Meryl, any last words before we get out of here?
No, I think well said. This is really great, convening. Really glad everybody's here. It's didn't have to be here, and you chose to be with us tonight. So appreciate it.
All right. Look, everybody, take care. Brother Mike, my man, look like he is ready for the camera. So keep him right, man.
Yeah.
Y'all be good. Have a good night. Take care.
All right. Like Facebook, YouTube.
Well, yeah, y'all be safe.